Ming is a weak and helpless boy who had his home burnt to the ground and his entire family taken from him by the Empire. And several years later, Ming takes over the identity of the son of a prominent family in order to grow stronger and ultimately get his revenge. But before all that, we have to start at the beginning. At this point, Ming has been on the run for 7 years, and he is currently being chased down by several executioners through a forest. As he jumps from tree to get away, one of the executioners is starting to wonder who he really is because an ordinary person wouldn't be able to move so fast. But his boss tells him that even if their target's power is a little above average, he is still only one person. So there's no way he could handle their entire squad in a fight. Eventually, the leader spots some fireworks in the distance, meaning one of his team members have spotted the boy, so he starts heading over to assist in taking Ming down. Ming continues running through the tree branches, but with the fireworks giving away his location, all the executioners are slowly closing in on him so he won't be able to evade them for much longer. And to make matters worse, this forest is home to several dangerous monsters, so Ming has to be very careful about where he lands. Ming tries to swing back into the treetops, but one of the executioners had managed to get in front of him. So before Ming even realizes what's going on, he gets kicked in the face and knocked back down to the ground. He is now completely surrounded, so the executioners prepare to jump him, but Ming refuses to go down without a fight. So as one of the executioners attempts to stab him, he knocks the guy away and steals his blade before stabbing him in the neck with it. Ming was about to do the same to the other executioners, but all of a sudden, an arrow comes flying in his head, so he's forced to back off for a second. He kicks 2 of the executioners away to create some space, but they keep coming after him. So he parries and dodges their attacks until he finally sees an opportunity to cut them down. Ming thinks he is finally safe, so he bends down and starts looting the guards' bodies to see if he can find anything valuable. However, an arrow suddenly lands next to him, and Ming can tell that it's not normal, so he runs away just before the arrow explodes. Ming looks up to see who was responsible for the arrow, and he is shocked to see 2 warriors from the Ministry of Justice here. The 2 are surprised that Ming was able to recognize them, but it makes things easier since he should already know that encountering them means he won't be able to survive. Ming asks why the Ministry of Justice would come after a law-abiding citizen like him, so the warrior read the charges against Ming. The letter says that 7 years ago, Ming's father committed treason against the emperor, so as punishment, his entire family was sentenced to execution. However, Ming managed to escape his fate somehow, so they are here to finish the job. Ming isn't just going to stand by and let them kill him, so he throws some rocks at the warriors to buy some time, but the archer fires several shots at Ming to keep him from escaping. And when Ming tries to run to safety, he is cut off by the barbarian woman and grabbed by the ankle. She is about to slam him into the ground with all her might, but at the last second, Ming uses a special technique to rearrange the bones in his leg, allowing him to escape her grasp. The archer warns the barbarian to be careful because it looks like Ming has a few tricks up his sleeve and they don't know what he might do next. Meanwhile, Ming is barely able to stand at this point. He is well aware that the barbarian is dangerous, but he gets the feeling that the archer is much more experienced, so he needs to be careful about how he deals with him. But for now, Ming needs to get back on his feet, so he drinks the health he managed to swipe from one of the executioners earlier. The barbarian then charges at him, so he is forced to back away, but he still has to worry about the archer, so he can't create too much distance here. Since he has no other choice, he imbues his blade with some energy as the barbarian lunges at him. And she clearly wasn't expecting him to be so strong, because as their weapons clash, Ming is able to completely destroy her club, and while the barbarian is still confused, he's able to sneak up behind her and stab her in the neck. The archer is enraged by the death of his comrade, so he swears he will cut Ming to pieces even if it's the last thing he does. Ming realizes the archer is using talismans to fight, so he must be a chi cultivator, and Ming knows how terrifying chi cultivators can be, so he is not willing to run the fade. Ming starts running for his life, but the archer isn't letting him escape, so he activates his lightning skill and kicks Ming 100 meters through the forest. Now Ming has been backed up against the edge of a waterfall and he has nowhere to go. The archer lunges forward at Ming, forcing him to jump off the waterfall, but since Ming is going down anyway, he makes sure to take the archer with him. They both end up plunging into the lake below, and once Ming regains his bearings, he tries swimming back up to the surface, but the archer grabs him from behind and tries to strangle Ming. Ming manages to slip free from his grip and gets behind the archer to lock him in its chokehold. The archer begins struggling to free himself and reaches for his blade in an attempt to cut Ming down. But unfortunately for him, his blade was out of reach, so before long, the archer suffocates to death and sinks to the bottom while Ming slowly floats to the top. A little while later, Ming washes up on the shore of the lake, but it looks like he wasn't the only one who washed up here because 2 old men find a badly injured man propped up against a tree. They are very disappointed because the man looks like he had some decent potential as a cultivator, but with that hole in his chest, even an immortal wouldn't be able to save him. The short one says they can't just let the young master of the Bai family die like this when they were tasked with bringing him to the savage ghost sect for his spiritual awakening. The tall one suggests they should just ditch him and run away, but the 2 of them already took payment from the Bai family, so they get hunted down if they ran away. Not to mention the fact that to take this job, they both swallowed a heart-relaxing pill that will kill them in 6 months if they don't return to the Bai family to give a report. In no uncertain terms, the two of them are screwed, so the tall one fires off a blast in frustration. The man's blast happens to hit a rock which Ming was hiding behind, and as soon as they realize there's a witness, they try to finish him off so he can't tell anyone what happened here. However, as the tall one tries to punch a hole through his chest, Ming subconsciously protects himself with an energy shield, something that shocks the two men because Ming's technique is similar to that of the Bai family. The two of them take a moment to inspect Ming's body, and just as they suspected, it looks like Ming has learned some basic energy control techniques, and his foundation is pretty solid. Moreover, he looks strikingly similar to the dead young master of the Bais, so the two come up with a plan and tell Ming that they will save him, but only under the condition that he lives under a new identity and does as they say. Ming has no other choice. Ming doesn't really have much of a choice, so he agrees to go along with their scheme, and after healing him, the men begin taking Ming to the Spirit Awakening ceremony. Ming is grateful that the two of them spared his life, but he is worried that if his strength isn't sufficient, then people will find out that he isn't really the young master of the Bai family. The old man assures Ming that he should be alright since the Savage Ghost sect has no record of his face, and as long as he follows the energy control technique that they showed him, he shouldn't have any problems passing the Spiritual Awakening exam. Speaking of the exam, Ming still doesn't know what it's about, so the men explain that it's basically a ceremony that allows you to gather large amounts of qi in your body, and when the qi reaches the condensation stage, you can become a spirit disciple, and from there your cultivation can reach even greater heights. The two of them tell Ming that it is a great honor to be allowed to participate in the ceremony, so he should be grateful. But if the spiritual awakening is so amazing, then Ming asks why the two of them haven't awakened their spirits yet. The men look at each other with a bit of sadness in their eyes and tell Ming that you can only awaken your spirit before the age of 20, and it costs an astronomical amount to even register, so old folks like them will never get a chance like that. On top of that, only then the 5 major factions know the secret techniques to succeed in a spirit awakening, so it is very dangerous for regular people. They eventually arrive at the exam site, so the men drop Ming off at the entrance, but before he heads in, they try to convince him to take a heart-relaxing pill, claiming that it will help protect him. However, Ming isn't an idiot, so he knows the pill is really a poison that will kill him if he doesn't fulfill their requests. He asks the men if they really trust him so little, but given the fact that Ming is a wanted criminal in the Empire, they are a little worried that he might run away halfway through the exam. They assure Ming that even if he takes the pill, everything will be alright as long as he succeeds with the Spirit Awakening, but doesn't really believe them. However, it's not like he has a choice here, because if he doesn't do as they say, they will expose him as an outlaw and he'd be hunted down again, so he swallows the pill and heads inside for the exam. Inside, Ming comes across several powerful cultivators from prominent families, and a lot of people seem to know the young master of the Bai family. Although, all the rumors seem to say that the young master of the Bai family is a useless bastard, so Ming realizes his public image isn't good. Just then, the instructor for the exam, Fang, arrives and he tells everyone that he will be in charge of leading them to the Spirit Awakening ceremony, so anyone who wants to participate should follow him. All the participants start walking, but all of a sudden, a bunch of them begin to choke. So Ming realizes something is wrong and jumps onto the ceiling to analyze the situation. There are dozens of ghosts picking off the participants, but when one of the participants goes to ask Fang for help, he tells them that this is the Savage Ghost sect, so they'd better be able to deal with a few specters on their own. Most of the stronger cultivators here are able to defeat the ghosts fairly easily, so it's time for them to move on to the next phase, but along the way, Ming is approached by this guy. He offers to form an alliance with Ming so they can tackle the next phase together, and Ming sees no reason to refuse, so he goes along with the guy's suggestion. Although the guy is a little suspicious, so Ming keeps his guard up. While they are walking through the tunnel, he keeps looking around in case of an ambush, but the guy he formed an alliance with tells him there's no need to worry about anyone sneaking up on him since everyone else has already progressed to the next stage. And anyone that's still in the first stage by now definitely isn't strong enough to be an issue for them. But with that said, there's only a limited number of spots for the next phase, so the man really does intend to betray Ming. He steps back as some purple energy wraps around Ming, and once he is restrained, the guy explains that this is the second stage of the exam, the sacrificial cage. As the name implies, someone needs to be sacrificed here for the other to move on with the test, and unless you're a high-level cultivator, that purple energy will drain your power until you eventually die. Ming is furious and asks the man if he thinks the Bai family will let him live after killing their young master, but the guy says this is just how the game goes. The spiritual awakening ceremony is already dangerous to begin with, so anyone who comes here has accepted the fact that they may fail and die at any point. And besides, the Bai family is on the verge of being expelled, so there's nothing they could do about it anyway. Ming is actually kind of relieved to hear that death is a normal part of the exam because that means he doesn't have to worry about consequences if he accidentally kills someone. He gets back on his feet and begins charging up his energy until he eventually breaks through the energy chains. The man is terrified because he knows the real Bai Kongshin could never pull off something like that, so he figures out that Ming is an imposter. Ming is surprised that the man was able to deduce that much in such a short amount of time, but it's not like it matters because he won't survive long enough to tell anyone the truth. The man is starting to panic, but he doesn't want to die here, so he's getting ready to fight Ming. However, he suddenly feels a sharp pain in his hand, and it becomes very difficult for him to move. Ming reveals that he had poisoned the man in advance the moment they first met because he was worried that something like this might happen. The man lunges at Ming in anger, but in his carelessness, he gets caught by the purple chains and he is completely drained of his energy a few moments later. Ming continues through the tunnel until he eventually arrives at the exit where many other cultivators are waiting. Fang tells everyone that they were lucky to have made it this far, but the true test is yet to begin because this is where they will undergo their spiritual awakening. This arena was specially made to allow several different groups to take part in the awakening at the same time, so they need to prepare themselves. Ming is still a little shocked that over half of the initial participants have already died, but it looks like there are even greater risks with the actual awakening. A few of the participants notice that there are already a lot of people seated inside the energy circles, so Fang explains that those are the members of the Savage Ghost sect who have been nurturing their spiritual energy since childhood. There are 5 circles in total, and Fang reserved 3 of them for the members of his sect, so he tells the rest of the participants that they are going to have to use the leftovers. The participants are outraged because their families paid good money for them to undergo this awakening, so it's not fair for Fang to monopolize a majority of the resources. But Fang doesn't care about fairness at all. He's the one who sets the rules here, and if they don't like how he allocated the resources, then they are free to leave. The participants have no choice but to go along with Fang's orders, so they all squeeze into the final 2 circles and get ready for the spiritual awakening to begin. Once everyone has settled in, Ming notices a beautiful girl sitting across from him, and when she looks his way for a moment, he begins to fall in love. But then he remembers that he is a wanted man who was forced into a potentially deadly ceremony, so love isn't a high priority for him. The girl is surprised that her spiritual charms didn't work on Ming, and she is starting to take an interest in him. But there's no time for distractions right now as the spiritual awakening is about to begin. Each pathway is filled with dense liquid energy, so when all the circles have been filled, the formations are activated to enshroud an incredibly dense spiritual energy which they must absorb. Within seconds, several cultivators fall to the ground, unable to overcome the incredible pressure. However, the more skilled cultivators don't seem to be having much trouble. Since Ming is new to the world of cultivation, he is struggling a little, but with the energy control techniques he was taught, he is eventually able to stabilize his spirit. Now all that's left is for him to absorb as much extra energy as possible so that he can open his meridians. While all this is going on, the leaders of the 8 branches of the Ghost sect all meet to watch the progress of the candidates. The sect leader is quite impressive with the performance of the participants this year, but he heard that the other leaders have a few people in mind whom they would like to recruit. He heard that Shu and Lin got into an argument over a particular disciple and even arranged a duel to decide who would get him. Lin pleads her case and reminds the sect leader that she was the one who discovered the Kalin nightmare body, so she has the right to take her as her disciple. All the branch leaders are shocked to find it hard to believe that someone here really has a nightmare body, but there's no reason for them to doubt Lin's testimony because moments later, the nightmare body is manifested right before their eyes. It only has 6 veins at the moment, but with the girl's mass control ability, the sect leader agrees that she would be a great asset to their sect. The sect leader asks Guy if he has his eye on any of their faction's disciples, but Guy tells him he doesn't really want to compete with the rest of them for disciples, so he's fine with choosing a few of the foreign awakeners. The sect leader asks him if he's sure about this, since even if the foreigners manage to awaken, they will most likely only end up with 3 veins, which is relatively low in comparison to the Ghost faction's disciples. Guy is aware of that, but his branch doesn't have as many resources as the others, so all he asks is that if any of the foreigners are fortunate enough to awaken, then the rest of his fellow branch leaders shouldn't steal them away from him. Just then, Lin gets everyone's attention and points to Ming because his cultivation looks like it has the potential to reach the legendary 9 vein. The sect leader takes a look and he is impressed with Ming's energy levels, but unfortunately, that's where his interest ends because he says Ming doesn't know the proper channeling techniques to stabilize his energy absorption, so his body won't be able to handle it. When someone isn't able to handle the energy that they are absorbing, it inevitably leads their entire body to explode, as showcased by the unfortunate people behind Ming. The energy Ming is absorbing is starting to take a toll on his body, so he seals his spirit veins to hold it in, but Guy says a trick like that will only delay the inevitable, so Ming will eventually die. Just then, all of their attention is drawn to another foreign participant, Jai, who has just successfully unlocked the 9-vein spirit, and Guy is rather pleased because he already called dibs on all the foreign candidates, and it worked out well for him. However, all of a sudden, the final branch leader, Lei, shows up and tells everyone that Jai is his nephew, so he's going to take him on as a disciple. He makes the argument that he is already familiar with Jai's thunder attribute, so he would be the best teacher for him. Gui is disappointed that such a talented disciple is being taken from him, but since Zai is Lei's nephew, he agrees to let him go. But he asks everyone to agree that they will let him keep any of the remaining foreign awakeners. None of the branch leaders have any objections, and the sect leader is in support of Gui's requests, so there shouldn't be any more issues for him. However, a few moments later, another participant awakens, and this one absolutely stuns everyone because he surpasses all their expectations. His vein count rises all the way up to 9, but it doesn't stop there. It keeps going until the participant reaches 12 spirit veins, and this is almost unheard of, so he quickly reminds everyone that he called dibs first. But the sect leader is sore loser, so he flexes his power and announces that he will be taking that 12-vein participant as his disciple. Gui is dejected, but there's nothing he can do since he doesn't have the power to stand up to the sect leader, so he's forced to just pick a disciple from the remaining candidates. Gui isn't expecting much since after so many promising candidates have already awakened their spirit, it's not likely for another amazing talent to bloom, but he tries to remain optimistic. As he looks out into the arena, he spots Ming still working hard to contain his energy, and Gui is intrigued because he was sure Ming would have exploded by now. The challenge Ming is facing is that he has enough control to manifest 9 spirit veins, but his core isn't developed enough to contain all 9 veins, so he is getting overwhelmed. The usual way to fix this would be to dispel some of the energy to accommodate his core, but Ming doesn't want to give up like that. If his core can't handle all 9 veins, then he decides that he's going to use his spirit power to compress the veins until they fit. No one has ever done something like this before, and honestly, Ming isn't sure whether it will work or not, but he eventually manages to pull it off. The ceremony eventually comes to a close, and the students are told to wait a while so they can be assigned as disciples. Most of the others who manage to awaken got spirit veins that are long and thin, but because of Ming's unique method, even though he only has 3 spirit veins, the veins are massive. A few minutes later, he comes down to take the foreign awakeners that the others didn't want, and he asks his assistant, Shai, to lead them all to his branch. They eventually arrive at a portal where they will officially begin their training as disciples, but immediately after crossing through to the other side, all the disciples faint, leaving Ming as the last one standing. An old man in a chair suddenly speaks up, and he says he's impressed that Ming didn't faint like the others. Ming thinks this must be some kind of trap, but the old man assures him that he's not in danger. The energy inside the temple is just so dense that most newbies can't handle it and faint instantly. Anyway, if they are here looking for techniques to learn, he suggests that they should take the levitation, basic fire, and basic wind spells. Ming accepts the man's suggestion, but he wonders why he is only allowed to use these scrolls. The man warns him that most of the scrolls here are too advanced for beginners, so he had better not do anything reckless. The only ones who have clearance for the highest level of scrolls are the ones that were personally chosen by the branch leaders, so there's nothing Ming can do about it. The old man tells Ming it's his own fault for being a weak 3 spirit veins loser, but then again, he realizes Ming has a lot of mental power for someone who only has 3 spirit veins, so he decides to give him a test. He pulls out a crystal and asks Ming to channel his energy into it so he can assess his strength. But before he does so, Ming can tell that the old man isn't a good person, so he doesn't want to reveal all of his cards yet. He decides to only use 1/3 of his power, but even this is enough to shock the old man. He has never seen such strong mental power in a newbie, and he can tell that Ming will go far as a cultivator, so he offers him a special cultivation technique. The original version was written in ancient Qiming Chinese, but this bamboo version is one that he personally translated. Ming asks the old man if he can see the original version, but the old man gets offended and says Ming would never be able to understand something he personally had to spend years just to translate. He tells him that technique will get him all the way up to the middle stage of mastery with no bottlenecks, something that even the faction's secret technique can accomplish. But if he doesn't think it's good enough for him, then the old man will gladly take it back. Ming apologizes and says he graciously accepts the old man's gift, but before he leaves, the man warns him not to tell anyone about this, otherwise he will have to face deadly consequences. Meanwhile, in a cave near the sect, 2 of the spirit awakeners are meeting with one another, and one asks the other how many foreign spirit awakeners managed to survive. Aside from the 2 of them, the others are Zilei and the Bai family's young master. But he thinks there's something suspicious about Bai because he is widely known as the useless son who was sent here because his family didn't want to have to deal with him, and someone like this could never survive the spirit awakening. They decide that they need to test him to see if he is really the same person, but they also need to be cautious so they don't accidentally blow their cover. They are here on a mission from the Ministry of Justice, and their job is to infiltrate the savage ghost faction's inner circle, so they can't afford any mistakes. Meanwhile, Ming has locked himself away in a cabin so he can be in his training. He still doesn't trust old man Ryan's cultivation techniques, since he doesn't seem like the kind of person to do something out of the kindness of his heart, but he has no choice but to go along with it if he wants to increase his power quickly. A few months go by, and it's time for the new cultivators to return to the main complex for evaluation. Once Ming and the others arrive, they head over to meet with Shi, and Shi asks them how their cultivation is going. The others admit that they haven't made much progress since no one has been guiding them, so they have to slowly teach themselves to improve. They ask Ming how his cultivation is going, and in all honesty, Ming has been doing way better than all of them, but he doesn't want to draw too much attention to himself, so he just tells them that he is struggling as much as they are. Ming looks around and notices that there aren't a lot of people here, so he asks Shai if this is everyone from the Jurain branch, and sadly, yeah, this is all the branch has to offer. Shai explains that this branch is the most neglected out of the 8, so they are lucky that they even get to participate in a tournament like this in the first place. He tells everyone that they need to try and win as many rewards as possible to help speed up their cultivation journey, and their eyes all light up at the mention of rewards. They ask what rewards Xia is talking about, so he says he knows there should be Huyuan pills available that can increase cultivation speed, but aside from that, he's not sure what the other rewards could be. In any case, he tells everyone to do their best because the tournament is about to begin. Shortly after, the branch leader arrives and gives a little speech, telling everyone that the path of cultivation thrives in diligence, so lazy people will never succeed. But just as he says this, the laziest MF imaginable comes crashing out of the sky. This is Zhu, and he is one of the masters here. But he is late because he spent last night drinking and has a massive hangover. Once Zhu composes himself, he warns all the students not to be lazy like him, otherwise he will beat them up. But with that said, the reason he is here is to help assess the students' cultivation levels, and if they manage to impress him, then he is prepared to reward them generously. The students don't seem excited after Zhu's announcement, so he decides to show them what he is offering and summons several gourds. He tells everyone that these are the rewards for performing well in the tournament, and in case they can't already tell, the liquid inside these gourds has the same effect as a Huyuan pill. It increases the speed of one's cultivation and raises their mental power quickly, so everyone is excited for a chance to prove themselves now. The tournament soon begins, and the newbies are set to go up first. Two of the direct disciples under the branch leader, Feng and Cheng, are chosen to fight against the three new disciples, but they are reminded that this is just a friendly match between fellow disciples, so they have to stop once they've made their point. Ming is surprised that they are having him compete against direct disciples so soon, and Feng seems to be enjoying this whole situation because it gives him a chance to beat down the pathetic three-spirit vain losers. His comments get the others angry, so they are ready to fight, and they think they should be able to handle Feng since it's 3-on-1, but once the fighting actually starts, Feng absolutely bodies the chubby one. The girl tries to assist him by attacking Feng with her wind blade, but it does absolutely no damage to him, and now that he has turned his attention towards her, he starts charging forward with harmful intent. Ming knows there's no way the girl will survive getting plowed over with such force, so he uses his levitation technique to lift her out of the way so they can all regroup. The leaders are really impressed with Ming's quick thinking, and Guy thinks it's unfortunate that someone as imaginative as Ming only has 3 spirit veins. Feng is annoyed that Ming interfered with his attack, so he targets Ming next, but even though his cultivation is meant to be several times higher than Ming's, he can't keep up with him at all, so all his attacks end up getting dodged. Ming then uses the wind slash technique, but while this version is definitely stronger than the girl's, it's still no match for Feng's brute force, so he smashes through it and charges at Ming again. The others see that Ming is putting up a good fight, so they decide to join in as well and start hitting Feng with wind slashes to distract him, while Ming sneaks in 1 or 2 good hits. The leaders are once again in awe of Ming's adaptability because he is perfectly executing hit-and-run tactics to compensate for his inferior strength. If he and the others can keep this pace, then sooner or later Yu is going to run out of energy and it will be their victory. A few moments later, Yu ends up falling to his knees, and the chubby one thinks this means he has finally run out of energy, but instead of just using his ranged fireball attack, he decides to run into butt-whooping range. And guess what? He is whooped. With the shabby one down, Yu now targets the girl again and backhands her as if she just served him cold chicken, so Ming is the only one left standing. Yu now charges at Ming, but before he attacks, Ming points out that the technique Yu used to take out the chubby boy isn't from the ghost sect. This startles Yu because he is worried his cover might have been blown, and Ming takes the opportunity to punch him square in the chest before immediately surrendering because he knows he can't beat Yu in a fair one-on-one. Yu angrily walks up to Ming and accuses him of cheating by distracting him in the middle of the fight. However, Ming points out that Yu did the same thing when he pretended to be hurt to trick the chubby one into attacking. Yu turns to the leaders and asks them to grant him a rematch with Ming so he can settle the score with him. However, the leaders tell them to shut up and begin scolding Yu for being so careless because if this had been a real fight, Ming's punch could have seriously hurt him. They tell him to just accept the way things turned out and reflect on his actions so he doesn't make the same mistake again. Yu has no choice but to obey the leader's instructions, but he is now certain that Ming isn't the real Bai, so he is determined to find out what he is hiding. Meanwhile, Ming is also suspicious of Yu because he feels like he has seen his martial arts before, and he knows it's not one of the ghost faction's techniques, but he doesn't remember the details. Guai tells the three that they should rest for a moment to regain their strength, because after this, they are going up against Xiao Feng, and he will be just as tough as Yu was. Feng decides to intimidate them a little, so he begins warming up and uses a wind slash that's so powerful that it scares the other two into quitting immediately. Now Ming is the only one who will be facing Feng, but he doesn't plan to back down, so he tells the leaders that he is ready to begin. Feng is really confident in his abilities, so he says he will be able to defeat Ming with nothing but a single finger. Feng generates an ice spike, which intrigues the leaders because an ice spike is a complex intermediate spell, so he must have worked very hard to master it. Feng launches the ice at Ming, so Ming moves his head out of the way to avoid being hit. However, Feng already planned for that, so he takes control of the ice and redirects it. The other leaders are starting to get worried since the ice spike spell is notoriously difficult to control, so Feng might accidentally end up hurting Ming, but Guy says it's fine since this version of the spell can only cause physical pain. Feng realizes the ice spikes won't be enough to break through Ming's defenses, so he decides to conjure a huge ice wall. This forces Ming to go on the offensive, so he pulls out his weapon and begins attacking Feng. The leaders are greatly impressed with Ming's strength, and they had heard that Ming chose to use the ghost cultivation technique for his training. But while the ghost cultivation technique is by no means bad, it limits the growth of an individual later on, so they think he might have been a little too hasty with his decision. However, Ming never actually used the ghost technique. The technique he got from Ruin is called the Netherbone cultivation technique, and it is very similar to the ghost technique, so it would be a good cover to pretend that he chose the ghost technique instead. And as long as Ming doesn't reveal too much of his power, there's no way any of the leaders will ever realize that he is really using the Netherbone technique. Ming knows he could defeat Feng if he went all out, but that would be too suspicious, so he decides to let himself lose and intentionally gets hit with the ice spikes, while using the bone shrinking technique to avoid any fatal injuries. After that, he surrenders to put an end to the match. But Yu recognized the bone shrinking technique, so he is now even more suspicious of Ming. With the tournament officially over, the Masters announce the rankings and Ming is labeled as an upper-middle cultivator, while the others are labeled as inferior. One of the leaders has taken a liking to Ming, so she calls him over and offers to heal his wounds for him. Ming is thankful for her help, but that's not all she has for him. She also offers him 3 shield talismans, and while Ming isn't sure how valuable the talismans are, if it's coming from a master, then he's sure it must be good. The final match of the tournament soon begins, and Master Xin is up against a talisman user, and the man launches several fire talismans at him. Each of those talismans is incredibly destructive, but Xin is able to block them all with his diamond shield. He then uses his summoning technique to raise a skeleton from the ground and send it after the man. Ming is shocked because he didn't know that was possible to summon such powerful ghosts. However, Shai clarifies that the summoning technique only allows you to form master-servant contracts with ghosts at random, so the strength of the ghost is entirely based on luck. And it looks like Xin was very lucky today because he got a white bone demon on his first try, so the man's fire talismans are almost useless against it. The talisman user is starting to get fed up with this, so he pulls out some explosive talismans and sticks them onto the skeleton before jumping away. With this, he is able to completely destroy the skeleton's body, but unfortunately, when dealing with the undead, something like this is never enough to finish them off. The skeleton continues walking towards the man and regenerates its body and continues attacking. The others are amazed by how powerful the summoning technique is, but Shai warns them that it can be a double-edged sword at times. The only reason Xin is so strong is because he obsessed over refining his summons, but because of that, he couldn't focus on his cultivation as much. It is pretty clear that the talisman user can't win at this point, so Gu orders Xin to stop the match. With this, the tournament has officially ended, so Gu congratulates everyone on the progress that they've made and sends them on their way. The other newbies say goodbye to Ming, and he is about to return to his cultivation cabin, but before he leaves, he remembers that his cultivation rate will never outpace that of the leader's direct disciples, so he needs to gain some actual combat experience. Normally, he wouldn't be allowed to use the main compound's training equipment, but since he's already here, so he decides to ask the caretaker to let him use the training simulation. He asks to fight 1 bone demon, so the caretaker tells him it will cost him 1 spirit stone. Ming has no choice but to pay for it, but it really hurts his wallet, especially since he only earns 5 spirit stones a month as a disciple. He's going to need to find a way to earn more stones later, but for now, it's time for him to train. The bone demon is summoned and immediately strikes. Ming quickly activates his shield talismans to block the attack. He then retaliates with a fireball, but that wasn't enough to defeat the skeleton. The skeleton lunges out of the smoke and tries to stab him, so Ming quickly blocks again. And while the skeleton is stun-locked, Ming manages to punch it hard enough to finally put it down. He is honestly surprised that the shield is so effective, even though he hasn't had the time to refine it yet, but he is even more amazed by how difficult it was to defeat a regular bone demon. He is now certain that he needs to learn the summoning technique, but before that, he needs to take a bath. Ming heads home and hops into a bath, but while he's busy cleaning himself, he suddenly realizes that a woman has been standing next to him this entire time. Ming freaks out, but the woman tells him there's no need to be shy since she's going to become his wife soon. Ming has no idea what she's talking about, but Mu explains that her family made a deal with the Bai family, stating that if both of them managed to pass the Spirit Awakening ceremony, Mu would have to marry him and become his cultivation partner. This is the first time Ming's heard about any of this, so Mu asks him if he's not happy with the arrangement. She's honestly surprised he hasn't tried to fondle her yet, since the young master of the Bai family is known to be quite a degenerate. Ming makes up an excuse and says he is just trying to focus on his cultivation, so he doesn't have time for romance, and Mu respects that, so she asks him what cultivation he is currently aiming for. Ming tells her he is going to learn the spirit summoning technique, but from what Mu knows, to cultivate that technique, you first need to condense yin souls to form a refining cord. She asks him if he knows where to buy yin souls, but Ming has no idea, so she takes his arm and invites him to go shopping with her so the two of them can get to know each other better. She takes Ming to the largest cultivation market in their sect, the Gray Market, and Ming is amazed because he has never seen anything like it before. But because Ming is so new to this, he almost immediately gets targeted by a con artist trying to sell him phony talismans. Luckily, Mu saves him before he gets roped into the scheme, but Ming is still completely clueless about how to navigate this market. He accidentally bumps into a giant boar head hanging from a meat shop, and the store owner yells at him for nearly ruining it. Mu asks Ming if he's interested in the meat, but he's more so curious because he didn't know people ate magical beasts. The shop owner explains that eating a magical beast's meat can help you increase your cultivation, but you need to eat close to 50 times the normal amount for there to be any noticeable difference, so Mu tells Ming he doesn't need to buy it. She drags Ming away, but the scams don't end there because Ming soon gets approached by a sleazy con man who tries to trick him into buying a useless rock. This is the final straw for Mu, so she threatens to report the con man to the sect leader and get him kicked out if he doesn't leave immediately. Once the con man is gone, Mu warns Ming to be careful because there are tons of scammers in this market. But there are also a few genuine shops, so she brings Ming to the Wanbao store. The items here can be quite expensive, but the quality is guaranteed so Ming doesn't have to worry about getting scammed. Ming walks over to the store owner to ask for some yin souls. The shop owner asks if he wants high, medium, or low-grade ones, so Ming asks how much the low grades cost. He is told that the low-grade souls cost 3 spirit stones, and that's way too much money for Ming to spend. He only has 4 stones left for the rest of the month, so he asks the owner if he can get a discount, but discounts aren't allowed here. Mu asks Ming if he doesn't have enough stones to buy the yin soul because she'd gladly lend him the money, but Ming tells her there's no need. He pays for the yin soul and thanks Mu for being his guide, but before leaves, she has a little advice for him. She tells Ming that if he wants to make a high-quality soul refining cord, then he should head over to the sect soul pond and catch a high-grade yin soul for himself. Ming already thought of that, but entering the soul pond requires sect contribution points, and Ming has almost spent all his money already. In that case, Mu tells him that there's a sect mission coming up, and if Ming joins her team and does well, he can earn a lot of contribution points for himself. Ming thanks her for her kindness, and the two agree to meet up tomorrow morning to prepare for the mission together. Ming then takes his leave, and once he is gone, Yu shows up from around the corner and asks Mu for a status update. Mu tells him she didn't find anything new. Yu reminds her that he made an agreement with the Mu family, so she needs to cooperate with his investigation. But she genuinely can't tell if there's anything suspicious about Ba Kongshan. She was betrothed to him, but she had never actually seen or spoken to him before, so this was the first time they actually met. If anything, she thinks Yu is the suspicious one because he is going to such great lengths to investigate someone who hasn't caused any trouble. But Yu is still convinced that there's something shady going on with Bai, so he plans to investigate things on his own from now on. The day of the mission finally arrives, so Ming meets up with Mu near the site. He took a look at the mission's requirements on his way here, and since all they need to do is gather materials, he thinks it should be pretty easy. However, Mu tells him missions like this are never as simple as they seem, which is why she brought a little extra help, including Yu, although bringing him wasn't her idea. She introduces Ming to the others, Du, Wu, and Mei, but Ming still wants to know why Yu is here, so Mu explains that he said he wanted to help. Ming isn't in a position to object to her decision, so he decides to just go with it even though he doesn't trust Yu. Now that everyone has met each other, Mu says it's time for them to head into the mountains and begin their mission. It won't be easy to gather the fruit from the mountain, especially since the black butterflies guarding them will swarm and attack as soon as they approach. Luckily, Mu already planned for this, so she pulls out the spirit-attracting powder she brought and asks Wu and Mei to use it to lead the butterflies away. It's a dangerous job, but both of them have speed talismans, so outrunning the butterflies for a while shouldn't be a problem for them. While those two are leading the butterflies away, the rest of them will head up the mountain to collect the blood fruit, and once they are done, they'll meet back here before heading home. Each person will need to gather at least 25 fruit for the team, but any extra fruit can be sold for spirit stones, so it's best to get as much as possible. Ming asks what he should do if he encounters some of those black butterflies, so Yu tells him he can just kill them because the butterflies aren't that strong. They drain small amounts of energy from their surroundings, so they shouldn't be a threat unless he runs into a swarm of them. But with Wu and Mei acting as decoys, that won't happen. Now that everyone is clear on the plan, Wu and Mei fly up to the mountain and begin circling it to draw the attention of the butterflies. And once the butterflies start coming after them, the two fly away as fast as possible. Most of the butterflies are now gone, so everyone else gets moving to gather their fruit and complete the mission. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the mountains, a high-level cultivator named Yi is flying through the mountains on her sword looking for something. A little while later, Ming had managed to pick quite a few blood fruit thanks to the soul refining rope he made. It may not be high quality, but it is really useful for scaling the mountain. Ming continues gathering all the fruit he comes across, but when he tries moving a boulder, he ends up inadvertently releasing a group of black butterflies, so he now has to fight them off. Luckily, there aren't that many here, so he uses his chain to slash at them and then finishes them off with a fireball. However, just when he thinks he can finally relax, he is suddenly captured by a binding spell you place on him. This particular spell was made to be effective against cultivators, so while he is bound, Ming won't be able to use his spiritual energy at all. Ming asks Yu why he is doing this, so Yu tells him he just has a few questions he wants answered, so he appreciates Ming's cooperation. After all, it would be a shame if Ming were to suddenly go missing out in these mountains, especially since 3 cultivators aren't worth much to the sect. First, he asks Ming if he has any connection with Xiaolan Island, But Ming says he has never heard of it before. In that case, Yu asks him how he learned the bone shrinking technique that he used during the tournament, because that's something that's only taught on Shan Island. Ming realizes he might have blown his cover by using that technique, so he won't be able to talk his way out of this, but he can't reveal that he really was on Shan Island. He tells Yu that he indeed learned the technique, but he says he just found a manual on the corpse of a fugitive and used that to learn the technique. He starts asking a lot more questions, but all of a sudden, the two of them are attacked by a liquid yin condensation rat beast. This is a monster so powerful that Yu stands no chance, so he immediately runs away, but not before throwing Ming at the rat beast as a distraction. Yu then flies away, and the entire time he is smiling to himself because he finally has a good excuse for Ming's death. Ming is now left alone to face the monster, but no matter what he tries, the rat is simply too quick and powerful for him to fight head-on. Ming gets slammed into a rock, and he realizes he's really going to die here if he doesn't do something soon. So even though he doesn't really have a plan, he's not going down without a fight. He summons his spirit weapon at full strength and charges at the rat, managing to slash it across the torso and cut off its tail. But while he may be able to do damage against it, he is still taking a lot of damage in return, so he won't last much longer. Just then, Yi shows up and she sees Ming struggling against the rat beast, so she sends a rain of lightning swords down to help. This scares the rat off, but that's not a good thing since Yi's goal was to finish it off. She creates a whirlwind in the sky to suck the rat up, but she inadvertently drags Ming up as well, so he gets sent flying through the air. He manages to regain his footing by summoning his Nimbus, but almost immediately after, he gets grabbed by the rat's tongue and is nearly eaten. Yi realizes that the rat is trying to drink Ming's blood so it can regenerate, but she won't let that happen. So she cuts its tongue off and the rat scampers away in pain. She now has to go hunt it down again, but she's going to need some bait, so she grabs Ming against his will and throws him into the area the rat fled to. The crash landing knocks Ming out, and by the time he finally wakes up, he finds the rat staring straight at him. It launches several spikes at him, so Ming pulls out his shield to defend himself. But just as the spikes are about to make impact, Yi jumps in and uses an artifact to absorb them all. The rat now turns its attention to her and launches more spikes, so she puts up a shield to block them. However, she underestimated how powerful the spikes could be, so one spike manages to break through and nearly hit her beautiful face. This gets her angry, so she locks in and returns fire with dozens of lightning swords, but to her surprise, the rat is still alive, although it's heavily injured now. Yi doesn't want to take any chances here, so she uses one of her secret techniques and brings a giant lightning blade down on the rat. Its body is completely destroyed, but its soul fragments still remain intact, and it'd be bad if it managed to possess a vessel, so Ming tries to stop it from escaping. But the soul fragments are too fast for him to catch up to. Fortunately, he already saw this coming, so she uses her swords to destroy the remnants of the rat's soul and uses her artifact to store the sliced-up rat body. Now that it's over, Ming can see that the difference between him and high-level cultivators like Yi is far greater than he ever could have imagined. He was fighting for his life against that rat, but Yi fought it as if it were a minor inconvenience to her. Speaking of inconveniences, Yi addresses Ming and tells him his fighting skills are pathetic, but he did serve as good bait, so he deserves some kind of reward for his role. She tells him that when she chopped up the rat, some of its body parts fell down into the ravine, so if he is willing to go looking for it, then he is free to keep anything he finds. She then turns around to leave, but before that, she asks Ming to tell her what cultivation he is currently using. Ming explains that he is practicing the ghost spirit technique, but Yi doesn't really believe him because she can tell that his technique is different from the normal ghost technique. She doesn't know what specific cultivation Ming is using, but she tells him that whoever taught him the technique messed up really badly because it has a major flaw. Ming is starting to get worried, so he asks her to tell him what the flaw is, but Yi doesn't see a point in getting involved with his cultivation. So she tells him it's his problem to deal with and flies away. Meanwhile, back at the base of the mountain, Yu has just finished telling everyone about the monster and how it has probably eaten Ming by now. But he leaves out the part about him sacrificing Ming as bait so he could escape on his own. Mu can't believe a monster like that would show up on this mountain since there have never been any reports like that in the past, but she does recall sensing a strong presence a few moments ago, so she assumes a high-level cultivator must have arrived to deal with it. With that said, the others are wondering why Ming wasn't able to escape the rat since his skills should have been more than enough to get away. Unless, of course, someone threw him at the rat as bait, but no one would be sinister enough to do that. Right. Yu speaks up and says he doesn't think Ming made it out alive, because while he was fleeing, he saw the rat heading towards Ming, but he definitely had nothing to do with that. Mu is saddened by the thought that Ming might have died, but for now, they need to finish their mission, so she asks everyone to give a tally of all the fruit they gathered so far. Their goal was to gather 100 fruit, but as of right now, they only found 60. So Mu tells everyone that they'll have to go out and gather more so they can meet their quota. And while they're out, everyone should keep an eye out for Ming in case he managed to survive. At the same time, Ming is currently searching through the ravine to find the remaining pieces of the rat, but these don't look very valuable, so he's starting to think he may have gotten scammed on his reward. Just then, he spots a piece of the rat's body that's still moving on the ground, and this looks like it could be worth a lot. But as soon as Ming picks it up, some of the rat's energy flows into his head, and he screams out in pain. While Yi was leaving the mountains, she is confronted by a fellow Taoist named Yan. He acts like he didn't recognize her at first, but Yi knows he knew exactly who she was when he confronted her, so he must have been trying to mess with her. Yan asks her what kind of beast she was hunting, so Yi informs him that it was a demon rat, and Yan is surprised to hear that since demon rats aren't strong enough for someone as powerful as Yi to be concerned about them. However, Yi tells him that this was no ordinary demon rat, it was one on the verge of reaching the crystal formation stage, and Yan is speechless upon hearing that. If the rat had succeeded in breaking through, countless lives definitely would have been lost, yet Yan still finds it hard to believe that a mere rat would be able to reach such a level. To prove it, Yi shows Yan a piece of the rat's gem, and upon inspecting it, he confirms that it indeed belongs to a near crystal stage rat, but that doesn't explain how the rat managed to get so strong in the first place. Since Yi has explained everything she knows so far, she turns to leave, but before she could fly away, Yan asks her if she would be willing to leave the rat's body parts behind since he'd like to run some tests on it to figure out the secrets of its cultivation. However, he says she already intended to give the rat's body to Senior Cold Moon, and Cold Moon is well renowned for her research ability which outclasses Yan's, so we can't argue with her decision. While all that was happening in the sky, Ming has been freaking out for the past couple of hours because he clearly remembers a dark energy entering his body, but he has scanned himself head to toe 5 times already, and he couldn't find any traces of it. He knows unknown dark energy is never a good sign, but there's also a chance that he was just imagining things, so he starts wondering if he should go back to the sect to get a checkup. However, if he returns to the sect, then you will know that he's alive, and there's no way he'd leave Ming alone after what he pulled earlier today. Ming briefly considers faking his death to avoid being investigated anymore, but if he were to do that, then he would lose the faction's support, and without that support, you won't be able to cultivate as effectively. Additionally, he mentioned something about his cultivation technique having a major flaw, and if anyone knows what the flaw is, it would have to be Ruin. So Ming has no choice but to return to the sect so he can continue his training. He flies off on his Nimbus to go reunite with the members of his team, and at the same time, the team is starting to get worried because they spent all evening looking for more blood fruit, but they are still short by 19 fruit. The mountain's terrain was drastically altered by all the high-level techniques Yi used to defeat the rat, so most of the blood fruit got buried under the rubble. And with Ming still missing, there's no way they'll be able to meet the quota before the deadline. Just then, they notice someone approaching, and to everyone's surprise, especially Yu, they see Bai flying in. The group members ask Ming what happened, so he tells them that he got cornered by a powerful beast, and it nearly killed him, but luckily, he was saved by a high-ranking cultivator just in time. Mu asks why he has been gone for so long if he was saved from the rat, so Ming makes up an excuse and tells her he got caught up in Senior Yi's attack, so he was knocked out for a while. But on the bright side, he still has all the blood fruit he collected earlier, and with Ming's 24, they now have enough for the quota, so everyone is relieved that today's mission was a success. There's no time to waste, so the others prepare to head back to the sect, and Du offers to give Ming a ride since he still needs to recover. Yu is about to leave as well, but before he goes, Mu reminds him that her family only agrees to monitor the savage ghost sect, not assassinate people. She knows Yu probably tried to kill Ming up in the mountains, but he tries to defend himself by saying Ming is a threat to the Imperial Court's mission. Mu tells him there's no way Ming would have returned if he was really plotting against the Imperial Court, because it would have been better for him to let Yu think he was dead. But speaking of death, she warns Yu that if he ever tries attacking Ming again for his stupid reasons, then he's going to have to deal with her. Later that day, Ming receives his share of the reward for the mission from Du, but just as Du is about to leave, he says something to Ming about strength being the most important thing in the world of cultivation, and the same goes for cultivation partners, so he thinks Ming might want to reevaluate his betrothal to Mu. A moment later, Mu happens to show up, and Ming asks if her betrothal to him is a farce, but she'd rather not talk about it here, so she asks him to follow her over to a nearby mountain. Once they are alone, Mu tells Ming that she knows he isn't really Bai Kongshan, and she has known ever since the first day she met him here. Frankly, she's surprised that Ming thought she wouldn't know what the person she's betrothed to is like, but Ming is a lot more mature than the spoiled Bai Kongshan ever was, so she honestly doesn't mind the switch. Ming asks her why she didn't tell Yu as she knew he was an imposter, but she has no reason to rat Ming out. Her engagement was originally arranged with the promise of providing her with a secret cultivation technique so she could advance to Spirit Master once she got married to Bai, but with the real Bai gone, she can no longer obtain that technique from the deal. Unless, of course, Ming were to help her out. Ming tells her he doesn't know any of the Bai family's secrets, but be that as it may, with everyone convinced that he is the son of the Bai family, he is bound to have access to information that will be useful to her. So as long as he helps her, she promises she won't reveal his secret. Over the next few days, Ming continues working on his cultivation, and those recovering pills he got from the minor competition are really coming in handy, but he's almost out, so he decides to try practicing something else. He takes a look around his room and realizes he still has those bone fragments he got from the rat demon, and the rat was able to break through one of Yi's shields, so its body parts should make good weapons. There's also some rat meat here, and Ming remembers hearing that monster meat can help with cultivation, so he decides to try some. He creates a fire in his hand and roasts the meat until it no longer smells disgusting, and when he takes a bite, he feels a lot of spiritual energy welling up inside him, so he immediately gets back to cultivating. The meat's power is really effective, so Ming was able to cultivate halfway through the second stage of the dark bone technique in only a day. If he finishes the rest of the meat, he should be able to break through to the third stage. But he doesn't want to rush things because he remembers Yi telling him that the dark bone technique is flawed, so he needs to figure out what the flaw is before he goes any further. He already knows Ruin will tell him the truth if he asks directly, so he needs to come up with a backup plan. And that backup plan is breaking and entering. Ruin is currently in the library meeting with the sect master who wants to see if he has progressed in his cultivation yet, and since he is so preoccupied, he hardly notices as Ming punches a hole through one of the outer walls to get into the library's hidden room. The master tells Ruin that if he doesn't advance to the next stage soon, then he is going to die in 10 years, and Ruin is aware of his potential fate, but he hasn't conducted enough tests to figure out the proper dark bone cultivation yet. Meanwhile, Ming encounters some skeleton soldiers down in this secret passage, but the skeletons are blind, so as long as he stays quiet, they won't be able to detect him at all. He makes his way into the secret room, and in there he finds the book with Ruin's notes about the dark bone technique. Ming discovers that while the first 3 stages of the technique are safe, Ruin has no idea what the 4th stage is supposed to be, so he has been encouraging unsuspecting students to use the dark bone technique in hopes of figuring it out so he can use the technique personally. It involved a lot of the students dying for his selfish goals, and that's a sacrifice that he was willing to make, but Ming doesn't appreciate the fact that he had been tricked into becoming one of those sacrifices. The shocking discovery causes Ming's heart rate to rise, which alerts the skeletons to his presence, so they attack him and Ming does his best to fight them off. However, those skeletons are not ordinary henchmen. They've got hands, and Ming was not ready for that, so he nearly gets knocked out. On the bright side, the skeletons aren't very intelligent, so he should be able to escape them if he can make it into the tunnel. But to do that, he's going to need a distraction, so he uses his soul rogue to take control of one of the skeletons and makes it attack the other. This buys Ming enough time to sneak out of the room, but on his way out, he alerts 2 more skeleton guards, so he's still being chased. As he is running away, that dark energy from earlier begins acting up, and it's making it really difficult for Ming to move, so he tries sealing it away for now, but that doesn't work out for him. One of the skeletons finally catches up to Ming, and it is about to punch a hole through him. But just then, Ming's energy begins reacting, and in the next moment, he finds himself in an empty black fog. He is baffled since he could have sworn he was just in the library's secret room, but for now, he plans to get out of here. He tries walking, but he gets blocked by some sort of invisible barrier, so instead he tries flying up to the sky to escape. But the barrier reaches all the way up there as well, and no matter how much Ming tries, he can't break through it. Since he's obviously going to be stuck here for a while, he decides to at least use the time to practice his spells, so he pulls out an hourglass and starts training. The efficiency of one's spell casting has nothing to do with spiritual power. Rather, it depends on how much time is spent refining your technique, and in this space, Ming never gets tired or hungry for some reason, so he's able to practice non-stop for 60 days straight. Eventually, his spells become incredibly powerful, but it's still nowhere near enough to break him out of this prison, so he's starting to wonder if he will be stuck here forever. However, once the 60th day is over, Ming is suddenly teleported out and wakes up back in his body, but he is shocked to find himself in the exact same position he was in before he got trapped. Luckily, all the training he did in there has made his spells significantly stronger, so he's able to destroy the skeletons and escape with ease now. A little while later, Ruin and the Master arrive to see what happened, and Ruin is shocked that someone was able to destroy his skeletons so easily. He believes it must have been one of the Spirit Masters since his Spirit Disciple wouldn't be strong enough to do this. The Master tells Ruin that his research must have attracted some unwanted attention, so from now on he is forbidding him from teaching the Dark Bone technique to anyone else. As for the people Ruin already tricked into training with the technique, too bad, because it's not his problem anymore. Later that day, Ming goes to visit Master Bing to see if he can remove the dark energy that went into his body, but Bing throws him out because he thinks Ming is messing with him. After hitting the ground, Ming bumps into Jilin, and he is nearly hypnotized by her seductive eyes, but he remembers we must stay focused, brothers, so he looks away. Jilin didn't mean to use her ability on Ming, but she is impressed that he could withstand it. Ming introduces himself and explains that he was here to ask Master Bing to dispel the evil within him, but when Bing checked him, he couldn't find an ounce of evil in Ming's body. In fact, Ming's spiritual energy is a lot denser than the average person, so Bing assumed Ming must have been lying because he wanted to meet Jilin or something. Ming says that wasn't why he came here, but Bing just tells him to pay his consultation fee and leave already. After that, Ming returns home, but he still has a lot of his questions on his mind. But even Master Bing couldn't locate the energy, and he's better off not worrying about it for now. On the bright side, Ming was able to swipe some good spirit recovery medicine from Ruin's secret cave, so he should be able to continue his cultivation now. According to the records, Ruin wrote the first 3 stages of the Dark Bone technique should be safe, but the 4th stage is where people kept dying, so Ming is going to have to be careful about that one. First, he begins meditating with the medicine he got to restore his spirit energy, and after 2 months, he is thrilled by how effective those pills were because his energy is higher than ever before now. He heads out so he can do a little training, but along the way, he encounters a group of men on the road. He can already feel the bad vibes from here, but he'd rather avoid causing a scene, so he tries to walk past them without incident. However, those three clocked him an easy target, so as soon as they are behind Ming, they try to jump his ass, and brother Big Mac launches a blast at him. Ming dodges and asks them what they think they are doing, so the three tell him to leave all his valuable items here if he doesn't want to get hurt. Ming takes a moment to analyze the severity of this situation, but then he realizes, hey, these guys are weak, so he proceeds to gut punch one so hard that he will be spitting up blood for days, and when Big Mac tries to attack him, he just knocks him out. The last guy tries using an ice spell to freeze Ming in place, but while Ming's feet may be stuck, he can still move his arms, so he launches several fireballs at the guy, and when he tries to run away, he pulls him back with his soul chain before knocking him out as well. Ming then frees himself, and while he normally doesn't enjoy doing this, they did start it first, so he's gonna run through their pockets and teabag him while they are unconscious. Once Ming is done, he's about to carry on with his business, but then he notices Mu flying towards him, and he wonders why she wanted to see him. She tells him that she just came because she heard he might have gotten into a little trouble, but it seems he was able to handle himself without her help. Ming is grateful for her concern, but he wants to know how she found out he was here in the first place. Mu admits that she has been keeping tabs on Ming for a while now, but she's not the only one because Yu has been looking into the Bai family, and he may be starting to suspect that Ming isn't actually Bai. Ming assures her that there's no evidence, so Yu won't be able to prove anything, but she still warns him to be careful because Yu is dumb and impulsive enough to do some crazy stuff, even if it's against the rules. Ming realizes Mu is right, so he immediately heads home and begins cultivating again so he can become a mid-level spirit disciple. This way, even if Yu were to try something, Ming would be strong enough to defend himself against him. After a few months of cultivation, Ming finally breaks through to mid-level, and his awakening sends ripples through the mountains, all the way up to the room of the branch leaders. They are all shocked when they realize that one of their branch members has broken through to the mid-level because they thought all the new guys were useless NPCs. But if they've actually got someone with talent, then they might be able to win the Interbranch Sect tournament that's coming up. Back at Ming's house, he's now officially a mid-level spirit disciple, and his power is noticeably greater than it used to be. Now he should be able to handle any shenanigans Yu tries to pull, and it just so happens that the shenanigans involve chucking a flaming rock at Ming's house. Ming jumps into the air to catch the rock, and he demands to know what Yu thinks he's doing, but Yu tries to act innocent and says he just wanted to talk to Ming, so he was trying to knock on his front door with a 10-ton rock. Yu tells Ming he knows he isn't really part of the Bai family, and this gets Ming's attention, but he decides to play it cool and hits Yu with a, "Nah, you have no evidence, and you're not going to find any evidence either, so no one's going to believe you." Yu is still convinced that Ming must be the son of a criminal who escaped and is posing as Bai, so he plans to force him to confess by beating the shit out of him. But when he tries to smash the rock into Ming's head, Ming calmly blocks it and uses a wind spell to slice it in half. Yu is left in utter shock because he had no idea that Ming had become this strong, and now he's starting to panic. Because if Ming was able to become this strong in such a short amount of time, then sooner or later, he will become too strong to subdue, so as Ming tries to leave, Yu decides he has to take him out immediately. He flies into the air and attacks him, and Ming can't believe Yu would dare to attack him within the sect, even though it's against the rules, but Yu clearly isn't thinking about the consequences here. Even with Ming's current strength, he would have a hard time defeating Yu alone, so he doesn't know how he's going to get out of this alive. Fortunately, one of their seniors happens to be passing by, and she is disappointed to see her junior sect members fighting each other, so she separates them and demands to know what's going on. Ming tells her that he and Yu were just having a friendly sparring session, so there's no need to be concerned. She obviously doesn't buy it, but if Ming isn't going to complain about Yu, then she has no reason to press the issue. She tells them that they are being summoned by the branch masters, so Ming starts heading towards the main hall to meet them, and Yu begrudgingly follows, knowing he can't make any more moves against Ming for now. Upon their arrival, Ming finds Fang already waiting there, so now that all three have arrived, the branch leaders inform them that they have been selected to partake in the tournament against the 9 Aperture branch. None of them were aware of any tournaments, so Zhu explains that the tournament is between this branch and the 9 Aperture branch, where both sides will send 3 of their newly initiated disciples to the subdued Dragon Island to compete for Spirit Fruit. Each winner will receive 10 Spirit Fruit, and these particular fruits contain Jade Essence, so you can refine them into a special spirit liquid that will greatly boost your cultivation. That's enough of an incentive for all of them to agree to participate, so Guy tells Zhu and Zhang to accompany the 3 of them to the island for the tournament. Upon arrival, Ming and the others are introduced to the master of the 9 Apertures branch, Dazi, and the disciples he brought for the competition. However, Zhu notices that only 2 of Dazi's disciples are present, so he asks about it, and Dazi yells for Jin to stop messing around because it's very disrespectful. Jin eventually flies down and Dazi apologizes for his behavior, but he grew up alone in the forest, so he's not familiar with their customs yet. Now that everyone is here, the three use their energy to unseal the entrance, and inside they find a volcano with 3 spirit trees laid out in a triangle. These 3 trees each have 10 spirit fruit, and special magic has been used to seal them, so the terrain around each one is different. The elders say they will stay out here to keep the volcano stable, and while they are doing that, the disciples will begin their matches within the spirit arena. After the rules are explained, they are all paired up and teleported into the arena, so the tournament has officially begun. All 3 competitors from the aperture deploy their snake puppets, and with their special puppet controlling techniques, they begin their attack. Ming's opponent goes first, so Ming prepares himself, and as the snake lunges at him, he uses his chain to tie it up before striking all the snake's joints to stop it from moving. As for Feng, he simply uses an ice spear to shatter the magic stone on the snake that was attacking him, earning himself an easy victory. But things aren't as simple for Yu. He tried to handle the puppet by taking out its master, but when he shoots a fireball at her, to his surprise, she effortlessly blocks it with a fire-repelling talisman. Yu is shocked to see this since that was a high-level talisman, and it should be very difficult for a disciple to get her hands on one of those that she has way more than just one. Yu accuses the Daisy of cheating since he must have given Fei all those talismans to help her win, but Daisy assures the others that he didn't give Fei anything. She got all those talismans from her grandfather, the great master Yingzhou, and she only came to their branch because she has a love for the puppetry technique. With that said, it doesn't change the fact that she's got Grandpa's money backing her up, and with all those powerful talismans, there's no way Yu stands a chance. The other Aperture members also seem to have prepared some tricks in advance because even though Ming and Feng were able to destroy the snake puppets, Ming's opponent turns out to be a body cultivator, so he doesn't need a puppet to fight after all. Yu is surprised to see this because body cultivation is a technique where progress slows down further into your training, so it is difficult to use, but against opponents of equal level, a body cultivator is practically unbeatable. Daisy believes this means his side will win all 3 matches, but Zhu tells him they still have Feng, and he won't be as easy to beat as the others. Daisy takes a closer look at Feng, and he is shocked to find out that he is using the withered wood technique to raise his strength. As much as he hates to admit it, at Feng's level, it's going to be tough for Jin to beat him, so he gives Jin permission to use the secret weapon. Jin then summons his praying mantis puppet, and Zhu tries to call him out because this clearly looks like cheating, but Daisy says this is all perfectly legal since that puppet is just a really advanced second-grade creation. Feng tries his best to fight back, but even after using his ultimate technique, Jin effortlessly counters with his mantis, and shortly after, Feng runs out of energy, so he is completely defenseless. Once Jin sees this, he orders the mantis to go for a kill shot, forcing Zhu to admit defeat to save Feng's life. The same thing happens with Yu's battle against Fei, so Zhu surrenders on his behalf as well, making her the winner. She is pleased, so she starts heading to one of the spirit trees so she can get her prize. Daisy begins joking that Zhu's group is going to leave empty-handed today, but Zhu says it's not over yet because Ming hasn't been defeated. He has been holding his ground against the body cultivator by keeping his distance with fire spells. Eventually, Ming stops shooting fire, so Brawler assumes he must have run out of energy. He lunges forward in an attempt to finish him off, but Ming was just baiting him the entire time. He still has a ton of energy to spare, so he fires a triple fireball at Brawler, and the first 2 completely destroy his sword, leaving him defenseless against the third. Daisy is forced to surrender to save his student's life, and once Ming's victory is confirmed, he diverts the fireball into the mountains behind Brawler. Zhu is overjoyed by Ming's victory, but Daisy refuses to accept it, so he says he wants a rematch. Zhang says no since she's satisfied with 1 victory, but then Daisy offers an extra 100 refined iron, and the gambling spirit in Zhu won't let him pass up such a sweet deal. However, he still needs to get Ming to agree to the rematch, so he pulls him aside and offers to give him 2 extra spirit liquids if he wins. That sounds nice, but if Ming is going to be risking his life again, then he's going to need a little something to sweeten the deal, so he gives Yu to agree to give him 2 sticks of calming incense as a bonus. With that settled, Ming's rematch is set against Jin, so the 2 prepare for their match. But before Ming goes in, Zhang quietly hands him a talisman and tells him to use it if things get too dangerous, because Jin won't be an easy opponent to beat. As the battle begins, Jin summons his puppets and fires a bolt of lightning at Ming. And while he is distracted, he sends the mantis in to fight. However, Ming is too fast for that to overwhelm him, so Jin decides to play with a numbers advantage. He sends all the mantises after Ming, but he uses a wind slash to get rid of the clones, and once he locates the original mantis, Ming tries to take control of it with his soul chain. Jin pulls the mantis back to stop him, but then Ming sends another wind slash his way, and even though Jin blocks the initial slash, Ming had also cast 2 more slashes, and he redirects those back towards Jin. Jin tries to shield himself with a turtle puppet, but wind slashes were too quick, so he still suffers a ton of damage. Daisy is amazed by how much mastery Ming has over his spells, and he is starting to consider bringing Ming to his branch, but Zhu shuts that down immediately. Back in the battlefield, the other Aperture disciples go to check on Jin, but he tells them he doesn't need any help. Instead, he takes off his cloak and activates the armor he had hidden underneath, giving him a set of wings to improve his mobility and allowing him to keep up with Ming's speed. Stu is outraged because he recognizes that turtle armor, and even he hadn't been able to break it back in the day, so it's not fair that Daisy gave it to Jin. Daisy tells him to calm down because he still hasn't broken any rules here. He explains that the original turtle armor Zhu is referring to is still in his possession, and the one Jin is wearing is a replica that he created on his own. Zhang admits it's really impressive that Jin was able to master mechanical craftsmanship enough to make his own armor even though he has only been part of the sect for 2 years. Furthermore, Daisy says that while Jin's skills are still rough, his intuition for mechanics is far greater than anything Daisy could have accomplished when he was Jin's age. Ming's speed advantage is now gone, so he is just doing his best to stay in the fight now. Jin makes the turtle fire a spider web at Ming, so he tries to cut the web with his wind slash, but Jin had already reinforced it. Ming now has no choice but to evade, but on top of the nearly indestructible webs, he still has to deal with the mantis, so he can't afford to hold back anymore. He reveals his third form technique and uses it to push the mantis back. Once Yu sees this, he is shocked because he had no idea Ming was holding back this entire time, and it's making him even warier of him. Daisy is impressed by Ming's third form sonic attack, but he doesn't think Ming will last much longer since that technique drains a ton of spiritual energy. However, even though it looks like Ming is at a disadvantage, Zhang still believes that he will find a way to win regardless. Back on the battlefield, Ming slashes the ceiling to conceal himself in a dust cloud, and when Jin tries to capture him, he uses the levitation technique to throw the rubble in his face. Everyone is shocked to see him use the levitation technique, especially Yu since this confirms his theory. While Jin was distracted, Ming launches a fireball at him, but Jin's turtle blocks the blast before transforming into a laser cannon aimed right at Ming. Zhang urges Ming to use the talisman she gave him to save himself, but that would get him disqualified, so instead he blasts the ground beneath him and uses the force to launch himself behind Jin. Jin doesn't understand how Ming managed to change direction mid-air like that, but just before launching himself, Ming tied his soul chain around his ankle, allowing him to turn back once he had gotten past Jin's attack. Daju is overjoyed that Ming came out on top, so he immediately starts rubbing his victory in Daisy's face. Daisy is disappointed that Jin lost, but Ming's strategy was genuinely impressive, so he can't complain about the results. He's a man of his word, so in accordance with the bet he made, he tells Ming that he can take all the spirit fruits now. While Ming is doing that, Zhang goes over to Daisy and asks why he was so focused on getting all the fruit for himself since he normally wouldn't have made such a risky bet. Daisy was trying to keep this a secret, but since he has lost all the fruit, the information is useless to him now, so he might as well let her know. He informs Zhang that the Sea Clan market is going to be reopening soon, and the spirit fruits are one of the items on the market's acquisition list, which is why he wanted to get all of them so badly. Yu gets excited when he hears that the sea market will be coming back because this is the first time they've opened in over 100 years, and he's sure there will be many amazing treasures available there. However, Zhang is still suspicious that the market opening like that might be part of some elaborate scheme, but before they can discuss it any further, their disciples call out to them for help since once they collected all the spirit fruit, the spirit trees burst into flames and the magic barrier began to degrade. Zhang asks Zhu and Desi to start casting the teleportation circle, but shockingly, it isn't working for some reason. Zhang tells them to stop messing around because the disciples' lives are in danger, but Zhu tells her he really can't open the portal here because the formation of the spirit trees has been broken. Daisy realizes there's only one thing that could cause the formation to shift like this, so he warns all the disciples to fly upwards as fast as they can so they don't get caught up in what's coming. Moments later, a red dragon emerges from the magma, and Zhang is shocked since this is the same one that was supposedly defeated to create this island, but Daisy tells her that Master Fujio was severely wounded at the time, and he didn't have the strength to kill the dragon, which is why it was sealed under the island. But now that the spirit trees have been destroyed, the formation can no longer contain it. And to make matters worse, the dragon has already broken through to the crystal formation stage, so it won't be easy to defeat. Daisy points out that the dragon's energy is still unstable, so if they work together, they might be able to kill it on their own. That's all well and good, but John asks what they are going to do about the disciples since they aren't strong enough to fight. Zhu says he will do his best to keep the dragon preoccupied so the disciples can escape, but he's going to need Zhang's help to pull it off. Zhang prepares her umbrella and uses it to boost Zhu and Daisy's power, so the two of them launch blasts at the dragon. This gets the dragon's attention, so it starts heading towards them. But when Daisy tries to slash it with his technique, he is shocked to see his spells bounce off the dragon's hard scales. The dragon begins flying upward in an attempt to escape, but Zhu refuses to let that happen, so he uses his energy to bind the dragon in place while Daisy tries to seal it in a red formation. Once the formation structure is closed, the dragon won't be able to escape anymore. So far, their plan seems to be working flawlessly. But just as the formation is about to close, the dragon forms a sword in its mouth and absorbs the energy from it, allowing it to launch sword blasts that are so strong that even with his turtle puppet, Daisy still suffers a ton of damage. The dragon then turns its attention to the disciples, so Zhang tells them to run away as fast as they can because they aren't strong enough to counter the sword energy. Feng uses wind magic to launch himself, and Yu creates a hole in the wall to escape, but Ming can't do that, so he just flies away in his nimbus. As for the other disciples, Jin managed to save them from the sword blasts by sacrificing a few of his puppets, but there's still one more blast locked onto them and Jin is out of puppets. There's no way they'll be able to outrun it like this, so Wu grabs Jin and Fei and throws them into a cave while he stands in front of them, ultimately sacrificing himself for their sake. As for Ming, he still has a few sword blasts locked onto him, but luckily, Zhang steps in and protects him with a magic barrier, and that buys him enough time to duck into a cave for safety. Zhang is glad that she managed to save Ming, but she has already used way too much energy, so Zhu tells her to wait outside for him. Once Zhang is gone, Zhu turns to Dazi and tells him the dragon has already eaten Wu, so fighting it now would be pointless. The blood has made it stronger than it was before, so the best they can do now is seal it back in the volcano. Meanwhile, Ming is making his way through the volcano's cave system when he is suddenly ambushed by Yu. He mocks Ming for falling for the same trick twice, and now that there is no one around to stop him, he starts punching Ming over and over until he is a bloody mess. And clearly he's enjoying every minute of it. Ming collapses to the floor, so Yu steps on his head and demands that he reveal the location of the treasures that his father stole. He wasn't sure before, but after seeing Ming use the levitation technique perfectly, he is certain that he must be the criminal Liu Ming. He can still remember the day that Ming's entire family was wiped out, and he recalls the pathetic look on Ming's father's face as he was beheaded. He only wishes he had been the one to put an end to that wretched bloodline with his own hands. Hearing Yu say all that fills Ming with so much rage that the dark energy in his body takes over, and a second later, Ming breaks free from his restraints. He was surprised that Ming was able to free himself, but he is still confident that he can kill him, even if he is able to fight back, so he charges up his energy and lunges at Ming. However, Ming gut checks the confidence right out of Yu's body, and it's clear that he's done holding back. Yu tries attacking him again, but Ming is way stronger than him now, so after exchanging a few blows, Yu gets his right arm broken. Yu tries to keep Ming away with an energy kick, but he just jumps over him and shoots him in the back with a fireball. He then grabs Yu by the throat and proceeds to slice him hundreds of times with his wind blades until Yu is left bloodied and unable to move. Yu now realizes that there's no way he can beat Ming, and it's clear that Ming intends to kill him this time. So Yu nervously says, "Calm down, bro. It was just a prank," and asks Ming to spare him. He even promises not to come after Ming anymore if he lets him go. But after everything that has happened, Ming isn't in a merciful mood, so as a last-ditch effort, Yu jumps forward to strike him. Predictably, Ming jumps out of the way, and before Yu can even react, he is engulfed in flames, burning him to death within seconds. Once the fight is over, Ming goes back to normal, and he is completely exhausted, but the cave is about to collapse, so he has to get out of here before he gets buried alive. With the volcano falling apart in all directions, things aren't looking good for Ming, but just as he was about to be engulfed in magma, Zhang comes to the rescue and tells him to grab her hand before it's too late. They manage to make it out just as the ceiling collapses in on itself, and Zhang is really glad she gave Ming that talisman earlier, since tracking it was the only reason she managed to get to him in time. She asks him if he has any idea of what happened to Yu since she couldn't find him, but Ming honestly isn't sure. He wasn't fully in control when he beat the bricks off Yu, so he only has foggy memories of the beatdown, and the more he tries to recall, the worse his headache gets. Zhang can see that Ming is in a lot of pain, and she doesn't want to force him to suffer any longer, so she takes him to meet up with Zhu, and there's no time to waste because if they don't get out of here soon, then the dragon will spot them, and if that happens, they'll all die. The group manages to get away safely, and a few days later, Ming is summoned to Gu's mansion. Outside, he meets Shi, and Shi is glad to see that Ming is doing better since he heard about the incident during the tournament. He asks him how his injuries are doing, and Ming says he received emergency treatment from Jai, so a few days of rest was all he needed to get back to top shape. That aside, he asks Shi if he has any ideas why Master Gai summoned him here since he's not sure what he wants. Shi tells Ming there's no need to be nervous since Gai just called him here to congratulate him on his exemplary performance in the tournament. In fact, Shi thinks Master Gai might be considering taking Ming on as his personal disciple now that Yu is gone, but they'll have to wait and see. As they walk through the door, Gai addresses Ming and tells him he deserves the highest credit for their victory in the tournament. He then presents him with the 3 bone marrow cleansing elixirs that he was promised as his reward. Gai would normally never hand something so valuable over to a disciple like Ming, but his efforts earned it. The marrow cleansing elixir only works once, so Gai tells Ming to make sure he uses it all at once, and he needs to exercise vigorously beforehand to ensure that his body absorbs it properly. Ming accepts the elixirs and thanks Gu for the advice, but just as he is about to leave, Zhu asks him to come over because he has something for him. He presents Ming with the extra calming essence and spirit stones that he was promised, and Ming is grateful that he held up his end of the deal. There is nothing left for him to do here, so Gai tells Ming to hurry home so he can use the elixirs, but before that, he asks if Master Zhang is feeling any better because he'd like to visit her. Zhu tells Ming that Zhang is still recovering over in the back mountains, so it'd be best if he doesn't disturb her, but she should be better in a few days so he can check on her then. In the meantime, since he was gone, Gu has a new opening for a personal disciple, and given Ming's exceptional talent, Zhu believes he would be an excellent candidate. However, Gu takes a long look at Ming and tells him that's not going to happen, so he should just forget about it. He then turns to Shi standing next to Ming and says he's going to make him his disciple instead. Most would see this as a slap in the face, but Ming wasn't really interested in training under Gu anyway, so he just turns to congratulate Shi on being selected as the sect leader's personal disciple, and once that's done, he says he will be heading home now. As Ming and Shi leave, Zhu asks Gu why he didn't choose Ming as his disciple, since he of all people should be able to see how skilled the boy is. But while they may be true, Gu doesn't think someone like Ming with only 3 meridians is going to get very far in cultivation. Later that day, once Ming is back at his house, he begins training so he can absorb the marrow cleansing elixir. And once he has worked up a good sweat, he sets up a bath for himself and pours one of the elixirs into it. As it mixes with the water, Ming can feel it penetrating deep into his body, and the pain is excruciating, but it definitely seems to be working since he can practically see the impurities being purged from his body. He then proceeds to dump the other 2 bottles in and sits there in silence while they do their thing. But while that's going on, elsewhere in the forest, 2 men are exchanging information left behind by Yu before he died. The sect will soon begin selection of core disciples, and they can't afford to let any flaws be discovered in his background, so the agent assures him that no one knows anything about who Chang really is. However, he's still wondering what they should do about Bai, since if Yu's suspicions were correct, then he might really be Liu Ming. Chang thinks he was a fool for looking down on the path of a cultivator and serving the court like an idiot, but the agent takes offense to this because all of the court's agents are meant to risk their lives for it without question. He accuses Chang of thinking about betraying the court, and he is going to have to report this to the court elders, but as he's walking away to go snitch, Chang runs up and plunges his fist into the agent's back. He has worked too hard on his position as a 12 Meridian prodigy here, and he is done being a court dog. Once the agent is dead, he says he can finally move forward with his personal plans, but first he needs to take care of Ming since he might be aware of his identity. Meanwhile, Ming is done with his cleansing, and he can already feel the difference as his meridians and muscles feel so clean now. He decides to test out what he's capable of, so he launches a fireball, runs out in front of it, and then blocks with his bare hands, leaving him with only minor burns. With these enhancements, Ming believes he stands a good chance in the upcoming competition. Then he realizes that while he may be able to dominate opponents at his current level, if they happen to be of a higher cultivation than him, then he will be at a massive disadvantage. If he's going to be going up against people who have superior magical powers, and he desperately needs to come up with a good strategy, and ideally, he would like to get Pet as strong as the Red Dragon. But it's easier said than done. A few days later, Ming goes to visit Zhang, and he is relieved to see that she is doing a lot better now. She takes one look at Ming, and she can tell that the meridian cleansing must have been successful, because he seems taller than he was before. She also apologizes to him because she heard that Guy decided to choose Shi as his disciple instead of him, and she tells him she thinks he would have been a better choice. But Ming says being recognized by her and Zhu is more than enough for him. If anything, he should be apologizing to her because not only did the Red Dragon escape, but she was also forced to sacrifice her treasure in order to save him, so he feels really ashamed. Zhang tells him he doesn't need to feel bad about it since she's just glad they made it out alive. And now that they are aware of the dragon, she and the other elders plan to embark on a mission to hunt it down soon. Speaking of hunting, Ming tells Zhang that he plans to go into the ghost sect's nether realm to capture a spirit to enhance his strength, and she thinks it's a good idea, but the nether realm is very dangerous, so Ming would need to be extremely cautious. The nether realm was created by the founder Sixian himself, and it is known for its incredibly dense yin energy, which is used to imprison many ghosts and spirits. The territory is expansive, so it is divided into 36 pillars, with an inner and an outer circle. The outer circle generally contains low-level spirits, but they get stronger the closer you get to the center. The spirits are classified into the pawn level, the fierce level, general, commander, and king. With Ming's current strength, Zhang believes he shouldn't have any trouble capturing a pawn-level creature and forming a master-servant contract, but he had better not even think of challenging the fierce-level monster because even if he somehow managed to catch one, the risk during contract formation would be enormous, and he might end up being destroyed. To help him on his journey, she prepares a map of the outer circle for Ming, but before he goes, she gives him one final warning, because aside from the high-level spirits, there are 2 major calamities present in the nether realm: the soul clouds and the ghost wasps, both of which Ming should avoid at all costs. Over the next few days, Ming makes his preparations to enter the nether realm, and he even bought 5 talismans from the gray market to counteract the specters he may encounter. He also bought a talisman crossbow with sun-shooting arrows from his senior in the Qianji Mountains, as well as various other items to repel ghosts. However, once he tries using a storage talisman to put everything away, he realizes that none of them actually works, so the man who sold these to him was a scammer. The next day, Ming heads to the nether realm gate and greets the man in charge of it. He barely acknowledges Ming's presence and tells him that entry will cost him 100 contribution points, so Ming presents his ID card to get it over with. Lee raises a stick and taps it on Ming's card to process the payment, and Ming looks really disappointed because he doesn't have much money left in his account. Lee notices Ming's pain expression, so he tells him he'll help him out a little. Since Ming is in such dire financial straits, he'd hate to see him come back empty-handed, so he says he's willing to sell the spirit locator to him for only 20 spirit stones. The locator is able to detect spirits within a 100-meter radius, which would be incredibly useful since Ming's going in alone, so he doesn't think twice about buying it, and he's really happy with his purchase. Just then, Ming hears someone's voice coming from behind him, so he turns around, and to his surprise, he sees Master Bing and Jilin. Lee approaches Bing and asks her what she's doing here, so she explains that she wants to take her disciple to the Nether Realm. Lee asks if that means Bing intends to go along with Jilin, and she says she does. Lee tells her it's not a problem, but the entrance fee for masters is a lot higher than that of disciples, so most masters usually don't accompany their students. Bing says she's already aware of the fee, and she doesn't mind paying it, so she raises her ID and pays 500 contribution points for her entry. Since everyone has paid their entrance fee, Lee asks them to wait out here for a moment since he still needs to adjust the formation of the gate. While he is doing that, Bing turns to Ming and she recognizes him as the boy who came to her a while ago for a possession check. She still doesn't understand how someone as lively as Ming could be possessed, and as a matter of fact, after staring at him for a bit, she realizes he looks even better than he did back then. Ming explains that he recently used marrow cleansing liquid to remove impurities from his body, and Bing is surprised to hear that because Ming must have done something truly extraordinary for Guy to have given him marrow cleansing liquid. She turns to Jilin and promises to get her some marrow cleansing liquid as well when they get back, but for now, Lee is done configuring the gate, so they all head up the stairs. However, before they go, Bing stops Lee and reminds him that Jilin is entering the Nether Realm for the first time today, so he has to give her the complimentary spirit locator compass. Lee awkwardly laughs and pretends that he simply forgot, so he hands a compass over to Jilin, and Ming is left speechless because he had no idea the compasses were meant to be free. Bing's eyes narrow once she realizes what happened, so she tells Ming that Lee over here is a notorious con artist, so you shouldn't trust him blindly. She asks how much Lee scammed him out of, so Ming tells her he paid 20 spirit stones for the compass. Bing thinks he's stupid for falling for such a cheap trick, but she also feels bad for him. So she tells Lee to return Ming's money before she gets him in trouble. Lee reluctantly gives Ming his money back and he is about to send them on their way, but all of a sudden, Chong arrives at the gate. Everyone recognizes him as the 12 Meridian Prodigy, and he says he's here because his master sent him to gather some herbs in the Nether Realm. They all get onto the teleportation circle as they are being transported. Ming notices that Chong has been staring at him with murderous intent for a while now, and he is worried that it might have something to do with the incident involving you. Ming wakes up and finds himself in a cave with a short old man next to him. He immediately takes a defensive stance, but the man tells him there's no need to fight because he's just the one in charge of the return teleportation circle. Ming calms down and asks the man what happened to the rest of the people he came with, so the man explains that they all woke up a while ago and have already ventured out into the Nether Realm. Just then, 4 disciples come rushing into the cave, and they beg the man to send them back since their month-long time limit is about to expire, but the man tells them he doesn't want waste extra resources, so he will only activate the portal when they have a complete group of 5 people. The disciples argue that if they don't leave before their month is up, then they will end up like the man, but hearing them talk about him like that sends the man into a blind rage. He was once just like them, but when he and his team tried to return, they were attacked by spirits, so he sacrificed himself to buy time for his friends to escape. Because of that decision, he ended up getting corrupted by the yin energy of the Nether Realm and is stuck here for the rest of his life. But that also means he doesn't have to follow conventional rules anymore, so anyone who angers him is a dead man. Luckily, Ming already left the cave, so he doesn't have to face the man's wrath, but he still has a long and treacherous journey ahead of him, so he needs to get moving. He also can't shake the feeling that Chong is going to come after him at some point, so he needs to prepare for the inevitable clash. After traveling for several miles, Ming tracks down a crocodile spirit, however. When he finally arrives at the location, he discovers that the crocodile has already been captured. In hindsight, he should have expected this, since if everyone has spirit compasses, then it's only natural that all the spirits that are easy to catch have already been caught. Just then, Ming's compass alerts him to another spirit nearby, and he smiles because he thinks luck is finally on his side, but he doesn't have time to waste, because if he takes too long, someone else might get it first. Ming arrives at the location and finds an ox spirit sitting in the middle of the canyon. He begins approaching to capture it, but just as he takes his first step forward, he realizes something's not right. He looks over at the ox and sees red energy flowing from it, so he immediately backs off because it is most definitely a trap. Just as Ming suspected, the ox explodes moments later, and it is revealed that Chong was the one behind it. Ming tries playing dumb and asks why Chong is attacking him when they have nothing to do with each other, but Chong tells him to cut the act because he knows Ming was the one who killed Yu. He isn't particularly interested in avenging that idiot, but he is curious about what Yu might have revealed before his death, like maybe his real identity or his mission. Ming can already see where this is going, so he takes out a small box and hands it over to Chong. Chong is curious, so he opens it, and he is immediately bound in place by the talisman Ming hid inside. He learned from dealing with Yu that no matter what he says, people like Chong are never going to let him go, so he's better off taking the initiative. Chong applauds Ming for his quick thinking, but something like this would never be enough to hold him. Ming knows those talismans aren't going to keep Chong restrained for long, so he tries knocking him out with 3 fireballs, but it's already too late. Chong breaks free and absorbs Ming's magic before redirecting it back at him. Ming managed to slip away under the cover of the explosion, but Chong chases after him until they arrive at a canyon. He launches several spells into the canyon to try and force Ming out, but Ming is doing his best to stay hidden. So far, his spells have had little to no effect on Chong, so he is waiting for the perfect moment to launch a surprise attack to catch him off guard. And when the opportunity presents itself, Ming wastes no time and throws several spells at Chong. However, that was just a distraction, so he could sneak up from behind and knock him to the ground. That was a solid hit, so Ming is starting to think he can win this fight, but that confidence quickly disappears when he realizes that he was only fighting one of Chong's blood clones, so it's only going to get worse from here. Ming is now on the back foot as Chong relentlessly attacks, and at this point, there's almost nothing he can do aside from run and pray. Just then, he notices a swarm of ghost bees nearby, and from what he was told, those things are deadly even to the high-level cultivators, so he takes a gamble and launches a fire spell to get the bees' attention. A few moments later, Chong catches up to him and he thinks it's finally over, but Ming tells him he shouldn't get too cocky, because in the Nether Realm, you never know what dangers could be lurking around the corner. Chong says Ming is just bluffing because he has nowhere left to hide, and he isn't strong enough to win, but Ming responds, "You think I'm losing, but no, we're losing." He then points to the swarm of ghost bees floating overhead, and they both know even Chong isn't strong enough to defeat Ming and escape the ghost bees at the same time, so this is a stalemate. Chong gives Ming credit for his craftiness, and he can see why you lost to him, but he makes it clear that he won't stop hunting Ming until he is dead. The two then take off running in opposite directions to escape the murder bees, and Chong seems to have his hands quite full, so he won't be able to keep track of Ming for a while. However, Ming is in just as much trouble, and his flying technique isn't fast enough to outrun the bees, so he needs to think of something quickly. Ming eventually runs out of energy, so he crash lands and looks on in terror as the ghost bees close in on him, but to his surprise, the bees suddenly stop. Ming looks down and realizes that he unknowingly crossed the border into one of the inner circles of the Nether Realm, and the bees are too scared to follow him across. This is a stroke of good luck since he won't be stunned to death, but he can't turn back now, so his only choice is to go even deeper, but he can't help but wonder what he might face in there. Meanwhile, in one of the inner circles, Jilin is fighting a corpse soldier as part of her training, and Bing is supervising to make sure she doesn't get hurt. Jilin is having a hard time fighting the soldier even though she should technically be stronger than it. So Bing explains that Jilin's usual strength comes from her nightmare body, but nightmare bodies don't work on ghosts, so she's at a natural disadvantage here. On top of that, this particular soldier seems a lot smarter than the ones she has faced before, and there's a reason for that, so Bing asks her if she can guess. Jilin thinks about it and asks if it's related to the incident where several immortal sect disciples went missing. Later that night, Ming finds his way into a cave and sets up a little camp so he can spend the night. However, just when he was getting ready to relax, his spirit compass began to react, and a moment later, several scorpions emerged from the ground. Ming immediately hightailed it out of there, but he accidentally falls through a crack in the floor, causing him to slide down a narrow tunnel until he ends up in a wide open cavern. Ming suppressed the sound of his breath, scared of drawing attention from the spirits in the area, but then looks at his compass, and he realizes it's indicating that there's only one spirit nearby. Ming thinks that seems odd because spirits don't usually stay on their own in places like this, not unless they are extremely powerful. A few days go by in the Nether Realm, and Bing and Jilin are flying around in one of the inner circles looking for something, but Bing notices that Jilin seems a little upset, so she asks her if something is wrong. Jilin explains that she feels guilty since the only reason they haven't made progress with their investigation is because Bing had to slow down to keep her protected. Bing suggests they should take a break to make Jilin feel better, so they stop near some rocks and Jilin sets up a fire so they can rest. The two sit and meditate for a few hours, but Bing suddenly senses something dangerous nearby, so she warns Jilin that bone corpses might be hunting them. The intelligence of the spirits seem unnaturally high, so Jilin asks Bing what they are going to do, and a moment later, 3 bone corpses emerge from the sand. All 3 of those spirits are fierce grade, so Bing says she'll handle it on her own and jumps into the air to prepare her spell. She manages to freeze the 3 spirits in one go, but then she notices something else, so she fires a blast at the rock behind the spirits, and it is revealed that there is a general-grade corpse leading the attack. Even Master Bing is taken aback because running into a general here was unexpected, but that doesn't mean she won't be able to handle it. The general sends the 3 soldiers out to attack Bing, so she casts another spell to freeze them in place, and while they are trapped, Bing begins blasting them to pieces. While she's doing that, Jilin asks why a general suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and Bing believes it might have something to do with the missing disciples incident that they came here to investigate. For now, the situation is too dangerous for Jilin to be here, so Bing says she'll create an opening, and when she gives the signal, she wants Jilin to run as fast as she can until she gets to the outer circle. Jilin tries to protest because she doesn't want to leave her master behind, but Bing tells her she's more than capable of handling this on her own. Jilin is the only disciple whom Bing actually cares about, so she doesn't want to let her get hurt, but it will be difficult to protect her with the corpse general attacking, so she tells Jilin to just wait for her at the teleportation array. Jilin does as she is told and starts flying away, but one of the corpse soldiers notices her, and despite Bing's best efforts to stop it, it manages to get away and starts hunting Jilin down. At the same time, elsewhere in the Nether Realm, Ming is walking through a dark cave when he is suddenly faced with a fierce grade bone scorpion. He quickly runs to cover because he knows there's no way he can beat one as he is now. But as luck would have it, this scorpion is actually wounded, so he might have a chance. He takes out the spirit-binding talismans bought to try and trap the scorpion, but he really needs to stop trusting people from the gray market because 2 of the talismans he bought turned out to be fakes, and using them just gave away Ming's position, so he's in deep trouble now. He tries shooting it with his crossbow, but that doesn't work, so he turns around and starts running away. The scorpion launches a fireball at him, and while he's disoriented, it attempts a stinger strike, but Ming raises his shield in time to block and goes back into a hiding spot by the time the dust settles. He can't afford to get hit like that again, so he decides to play it safe and keep his distance until he can find an opening. Eventually, Ming notices a crack in the scorpion's shell near its leg, so he wastes no time and fires an arrow into it, dealing a ton of damage. That arrow basically backhanded some sense into the scorpion, so it realizes it's not worth it to fight Ming and tries to escape. However, Ming is already invested in the scorpion's downfall, so he begins hitting it with every spell he knows, and sooner or later, he's sure the scorpion will go down. Once it has been sufficiently weakened, Ming binds it in his chain and begins drawing the circle for the spirit contract. The scorpion's consciousness is faint right now, so it should be possible for Ming to overpower it, even though it is fierce grade. But after Ming starts the process, misfortune strikes. That mysterious dark energy begins acting up again, and it is currently draining Ming of his energy, so if he's not careful, the scorpion might take advantage of the situation to overpower him instead, so he needs to hurry and finish the ritual. He puts all the energy he has into sealing the dark energy away, but it wasn't enough, so the dark energy breaks free, and the next time Ming opens his eyes, he finds himself in the pocket dimension once again. The space seems a little larger than it was last time, and for some reason, the scorpion was dragged in here along with him. Ming freaks out at first, but then he realizes that it isn't attacking him, so the spirit contract must have been successful. He's glad he now has the scorpion on his side, but he still doesn't know how to get out of here, so the only thing he can do is train until he gets out. Ming begins running combat drills with the scorpion to pass the time, and the scorpion is a quick learner, so Ming is glad he formed a contract with it. But it's too bad that it can't fight at full strength in here since it is still wounded, and damage to its exoskeleton can only be repaired by consuming spirit bones, so Ming promises to get some for it once they get out of here. Several weeks go by in the pocket dimension, until eventually Ming and the scorpion are released, and as soon as they are out, Ming keeps his promises and finds a skeleton for the scorpion to eat. He still isn't sure what that space is, but so far it has been a great help since it allows him to train for a long time without any time passing in the real world. Just then, Ming senses someone approaching, so he and the scorpion hide in the sand and wait to see who it is. Ming sees Jilin descend from the inner circle, and he's a little concerned since he's sure Jilin was meant to be traveling with Bing. He can see that she's being chased by a corpse soldier, so he deduces that Jilin must have been separated from Bing somehow. His first instinct is to go help her, but he is worried that this might be one of Bing's traps to lure out the person they are investigating, and he wouldn't want to mess it up, so he decides to wait a little longer to see if Jilin really needs help. A moment later, the corpse soldier summons a spear and manages to strike Jilin's upper body, sending her tumbling to the ground, and that's a clear sign that she's in danger, so Ming springs into action. The corpse soldier sends its spear after Jilin to finish her off, but at the last second, Ming manages to pull her to safety with his chain. Once Jilin realizes that Ming was the one who saved her, she thanks him for his help, and he points out that her shoulder is poisoned. Jilin explains that the corpse soldier's spear has an effect that prevents her from controlling her spirit energy properly once she is hit. Her bow should be able to damage the soldier, but she won't be able to use it until she has recovered from the poison, so she asks Ming if he can buy her some time. The soldier launches its spear at the two of them, so Ming prepares a fireball to intercept it. However, the frontal spear attack turned out to be an illusion, so the real spear materializes next to Ming and he is forced to block it with his shield. The spear's power is just as devastating as the scorpion's sting, so it breaks through the first 2 layers of the shield with ease. But Ming learned a thing or two in the pocket dimension, so he is able to counter the spear, and Jilin is amazed because she had no idea Ming was so strong. This was the end of episode 12. Subscribe to not miss the next part.